The Boston Celtics are on fire. The team secured their fourth straight win by defeating the Cleveland Cavaliers on Tuesday. But even with this momentum, there's still room for adjustments to the roster before the trade deadline. The backup bigs, like Luke Kornet and Neemias Queta, have been pleasantly surprising. But with Kristaps Porzingis dealing with injuries and Al Horford already a veteran, it makes sense for the team to be seeking additional reinforcement to ensure more stability in the rotation. So, who could come in to strengthen the frontcourt? With the trade deadline closing this Thursday, here are some realistic possibilities for the Celtics. Walker Kessler to the Boston Celtics. If there's a cheap, promising center available on the trade market, that guy is Walker Kessler from the Utah Jazz. He's still on his rookie contract through next season and has already proven to be a real steal, considering he was chosen only at the end of the first round in the draft. But hold on, just because he's on the table doesn't mean it'll be easy for the Boston Celtics to acquire him. Danny Ainge, Jazz president and former Celtics executive, knows exactly what he has in Kessler. He's not going to trade him for just any offer, unless someone comes in with an absolutely irresistible proposal. And that's where Boston's dilemma comes in. Is it worth spending first-round picks to bring in a young center now? Looking toward the future, it might make sense. Al Horford is already 37 years old and will retire sooner or later. The team is also facing a salary cap limit, so securing a young, cheap center could be a smart move. On the other hand, if the goal is to win now, Kessler may not be the ideal piece. He's defensively talented, a strong rim protector, and has potential for further growth. But would he make that much of a difference for the team in the short term? Luke Kornet already plays a similar role, protecting the rim and providing solid defense. If the price is just a protected first-round pick, it might be worth the gamble. But if Utah asks for multiple draft picks, that changes the conversation entirely. Boston needs to weigh whether it makes sense to give up such valuable assets for a player who, at the moment, isn't an urgent need. If the Celtics see Kessler as a pillar for the future and can get a reasonable deal, it could be a savvy move. But if the cost is too high, maybe it's better to hold on to those picks and strengthen the team with a more experienced center ready to contribute now. Daniel Theis. Back to the Celtics. If you've been following the Boston Celtics for a while, you already know Daniel Theis. The German big man had 2 stints with the team and was always a hard-working player, one of those guys who does the dirty work in the paint. Now, with the New Orleans Pelicans, he might be available for a virtually symbolic price. But does he still have something to offer Boston? First, let's understand the Pelicans' situation. The team has essentially thrown in the towel on the season after DeJounte Murray tore his Achilles tendon. On top of that, they are over the NBA's luxury tax threshold, meaning they'll want to shed salary. This makes Theis an expendable piece. He's not an essential part of their rotation, so trading him for anything that clears cap space would already be a good deal for them. For Boston, this could be an opportunity to strengthen the front court. Without giving up much, the Celtics could acquire Theis for a heavily protected second-round pick or even an expiring contract. If the price is that low, why not bring back someone who already knows the system and has playoff experience? Now comes the big question. Is Theis actually an upgrade over what Boston already has? Let's be honest. Right now, he's not significantly better than Luke Kornet or Neemias Queta. Kornet has been a solid rim protector, and Queta, despite his lack of experience, has shown intriguing flashes when given minutes. The biggest issue with Theis is that his three-point shot has never been reliable, and he isn't an elite rim protector. He brings energy, solid defense, and a high basketball IQ. But is that enough to justify giving up even a second-round pick? If Boston doesn't find any better options on the market and simply needs another body for the rotation, Theis could be a low-cost solution. But if there's an opportunity to acquire a big man with more defensive and offensive impact, it might be wiser to look elsewhere. Too many Kamara to the Celtics. If there's one name few expected to see on the trade market, but who's been turning heads, it's Toumani Camara. The Belgian power forward landed with the Portland Trail Blazers as somewhat of a throw-in the deal that sent Jusuf Nurkic to the Suns, but he has seized the opportunity and is proving he has much more to offer. Now the big question is, Should the Boston Celtics try to bring Kamara into their roster? First, let's talk about what he's delivering in Portland. He started the season as a rotational player, but with injuries in the lineup, he earned a starting role and showed he can be a solid defender and a reliable shooter. In other words, a classic 3-and-D player, someone who can hit threes and play tough defense, a skill set that's always valuable for a championship-contending team. Another major plus for Kamara is his contract. He's locked in until 2026-27 on a very low salary, making him a perfect asset for a team like the Celtics, who will face challenges in adding talent due to salary cap restrictions. Productive, low-cost players are gold in the NBA, and Kamara fits that mold perfectly. Now comes the tricky part. Unlike other players who might be available for a reasonable price, Portland has no urgency to trade Kamara. The team is in a rebuilding phase, and having a young, cheap, and productive wing makes complete sense for their future. This means that if Boston really wants him, they'll have to pay up, not in cash, but in first-round draft picks. And that's where the big question arises. Is it worth spending such a valuable asset on a player who is still developing? The Celtics need reinforcements now to compete for a title this season. Kamara is talented, but he's not an immediate game-changer, like a dominant center or a proven veteran would be. The team could bet on his long-term potential, but losing a first-round pick might be too steep a price for a player who, at this stage, is still more of a complementary piece. If the Celtics can strike a deal without giving up too much, it's a great move. A strong defensive wing who can further develop in Boston's system would be a solid addition. But if Portland demands multiple first-round picks, it might be wiser to hold on to those assets for a trade that brings a more impactful player in the short term. Guerschon Yabusele back to the Celtics. Guerschon Yabusele and the Boston Celtics. We've seen this movie before, haven't we? The French power forward, a first-round pick by the Celtics in 2016, never took off in the NBA and ended up going to Europe, where he rebuilt his career. But now, in his second stint in the league with the Philadelphia 76ers, he looks like a completely different player. Should Boston consider a remake of this story and bring him back? If you watched the last game between the Celtics and Sixers, you saw Yabusele put on a show for 3 quarters before Boston made a comeback in the final moments. But what's impressive isn't just one isolated game. He has been one of Philadelphia's most consistent players this season. What changed? His three-point shooting and defense. In his first NBA stint, Yabusele never developed a reliable outside shot and struggled defensively, especially against quicker players. Now, he's consistently knocking down perimeter shots and holding his own on defense. In other words, he has become exactly the type of player the Celtics love, a strong power forward who spaces the floor and can take some of the load off Al Horford and Kristaps Porzingis. But here's the problem. If Yabusele is playing well, why would the 76ers trade him now? The answer lies in the salary cap. Philadelphia might not have enough cap space to keep him next season, so there's a scenario where they trade Yabusele now to get something in return, rather than lose him for nothing. On the other hand, if the Sixers still believe they can turn their season around, it's hard to imagine them giving up one of their most consistent contributors. So, if Boston really wants to bring him back, they'll have to pay a price. The expectation is that a few second-round picks might be enough, but if Philadelphia demands a first-round pick, is it worth it? If the price is reasonable, absolutely. Having a power forward who can space the floor and provide relief for Horford and Porzingis could be a key factor in the playoffs. But if the cost is too high, Boston might be better off looking for more impactful reinforcements. Day'Ron Sharpe to the Celtics? If there's one thing the Boston Celtics have been missing in recent months, it's a dominant rebounder. Despite being an extremely talented team, there are games where it's clear they lack a player who can fight for every loose ball in the paint. And that's where the name of Day'Ron Sharpe from the Brooklyn Nets comes into play. The 22-year-old center is one of the best rebounders in the NBA this season, especially on the offensive glass. He has an imposing physique, protects the rim well, and brings the kind of energy that every championship team needs. But the big question is, would he be a real upgrade for the Celtics, or just another name on the bench? Looking strictly at the numbers, the answer is yes. Sharp has been dominating the paint whenever he gets minutes, something Boston could use, especially against teams that thrive on offensive rebounds like the Denver Nuggets and Milwaukee Bucks. But it's not that simple. His offensive game is extremely limited. He doesn't have a reliable jump shot and mainly scores on close-range attempts. In other words, he doesn't stretch the floor, something the Celtics highly value in their offensive system. If he's on the court, he could end up clogging the offense in crucial moments. And here's the key question. Boston already has Neemias Queta on the roster, and he has been improving throughout the season. The Portuguese big man has shown potential, defending well, and grabbing rebounds when given playing time. If the Celtics believe Sharp is clearly an upgrade over Queta, then a trade makes sense. But if he's just a slightly stronger version of the Portuguese center, is it really worth giving up draft picks to acquire him? If the Brooklyn Nets are willing to trade Sharp for a few second-round picks, it could be an interesting move to strengthen the frontcourt without sacrificing the future. But if the Celtics believe Queta can continue developing and provide the same impact, then it might be better to hold on to those assets for a player who can make a bigger difference on both ends of the floor. Hey Celtics fanatics, what do you think of this news? Leave your opinion in the comments, as it's highly valued.